forgot how to be happy. Not in the dramatic sense, that's always the first thing to say about this particular kind of loss, because the dramatic version is the one people know how to respond to. The dramatic version has a cause, a breakup, a death, a collapse, something you can point to and say that's where it went, something that explains the absence, something other people can understand and make room for. This isn't that version. This version arrived quietly, without a specific moment, without a before and after you can identify. It happened in the accumulation of ordinary days that asked too much or gave too little, in the gradually increasing weight of managing everything while receiving not quite enough of what would have made the managing sustainable, in the slow, nearly imperceptible process of the default shifting, from ease being the baseline to effort being the baseline, from happiness being what you return to between the hard things, to happiness being something you sometimes work toward for the hard things. You didn't lose it. It got buried under the weight of everything that needed to be handled, managed, gotten through. And at some point the weight became so total that you stopped being able to feel what was underneath it. Not because it was gone, because the access became unavailable. That's what I want to talk about. Not the dramatic version. This one, the quiet, functional, completely invisible from the outside version of having forgotten what it feels like to just be okay. Let me start with what happy actually felt like, not the concept, the experience, because I think you've been away from it long enough that the specific texture of it has gotten abstract. And abstract things are harder to move toward. It felt like ease in your body, not the absence of difficulty, the presence of something underneath the difficulty that held you, a quality of okayness that didn't require maintenance, that was just there, ambient, the way warmth is in a room with good light. You didn't have to generate it, you didn't have to sustain it. It was just the texture of being alive on an ordinary day. It felt like the laugh that arrived before you could think about whether to laugh, the involuntary kind, the one that happened because something was genuinely funny and your body responded before your brain could vet it. You were surprised by it almost, caught off guard by your own levity. That quality of being surprised by your own good mood is something you probably remember even if you can't fully access it right now. It felt like interest in ordinary things. Not enthusiasm, just interest. The conversation that pulled you in, the problem that engaged you. The afternoon that had the specific quality of meaning something even though nothing particular was happening. The sense that the present moment was worth being in for its own sake rather than as something to get through on the way to something else. And it felt like not having to try. That's the one that's probably most distant right now. The version of yourself that just existed, without the overhead of managing the existence, without the constant low-level assessment of how you're doing and whether that's okay and what needs to be different. Just being, without the commentary. That version is still in there. It hasn't been replaced, but it's underneath something, and finding it requires understanding what's on top of it. Here's what I think is on top of it. Sustained management, for longer than you probably fully realize. Because here's how it goes. Something happens, or a series of things happen, that requires you to shift into management mode. The situation is hard and it needs handling, and you handle it. And then the situation resolves, or partially resolves, or just becomes the new normal, and you expect to shift back out of management mode and into whatever came before. But you don't quite shift back. Because shifting back requires conditions, rest, space, the specific absence of new demands for long enough that the body and mind can actually return to baseline. And those conditions don't quite arrive. Something else needs handling. Or the handling of the first thing didn't fully complete, so it's still running in the background. Or the pattern of managing became so established that it kept running even after the specific things that triggered it were resolved. And so the management became the default, not dramatically, just gradually. The same way you don't notice the light changing until you realize the room is darker than it was. And happiness, real happiness, doesn't live in management mode. It lives in the spaces management doesn't occupy. In the moments when nothing needs handling, when the surveillance is off, when you're in something rather than getting through something. And you've been in management mode long enough that those spaces have become rare. And the rare ones, when they come, often get consumed by the management brain before they can fully register. You're in a good moment, and instead of being in it, you're noticing that you're in it and wondering how long it will last and slightly bracing for it to end. And by the time all that happens, the moment is gone and you were never quite in it. That's the mechanism. Management, so total and so sustained that the moments of ease don't have space to exist or time to register before they're absorbed. I want to talk about the specific things that tend to be on top of the happiness in people who forget how to access it, because I think naming them specifically helps you understand what you're actually working with. There's the unprocessed weight of accumulated hard things, not necessarily catastrophic things. Just the ordinary difficulty of life lived at pace with not enough of what would actually restore you. The minor losses that never got grieved. The frustrations that never found expression. The disappointments that got filed, underhandled, and moved past without being fully processed. Each one small, collectively substantial, and sitting in you somewhere underneath the daily functioning taking up space and drawing energy that could otherwise be available for ease. There's the hypervigilance that develops somewhere along the way, the specific mode of consciousness that is always slightly on alert, always monitoring for what might go wrong, always 1 or 2 steps ahead of the present moment in case the present moment needs to be managed. That mode was probably adapted at some point. It probably served you in conditions where staying alert mattered, but it doesn't switch off automatically when the conditions change. It keeps running, and running in environments that don't require it means spending resources on surveillance rather than on presence. And presence is where happiness lives. There's the performance layer, the ongoing project of being the version of yourself that is acceptable to the world, that handles things, that doesn't burden others, that maintains the appearance of being okay whether or not being okay is accurate. That performance is exhausting in a way that is hard to measure because it's constant. It's running even when nothing specific is happening. And the exhaustion it produces is not the kind that a good night's sleep addresses. It's the kind that only addresses when the performance is allowed to stop. And there's the disconnection from your own preferences, pleasures, and desires that develops when you've been in management mode long enough. Because management mode is about the situation, about what's needed, what needs handling, what the external demands require. It's not about you. And when you're in it long enough, the internal version of you, the one with preferences and pleasures, and things it genuinely finds interesting and good, gets quieter, not gone. Quieter, and the quiet makes it hard to pursue the things that would actually nourish you, because you've gotten out of the habit of knowing what those things are. I want to address the guilt, because I think for a lot of people, the forgetting how to be happy comes with a specific layer of guilt about it that makes it harder to address. You have things, maybe a lot of things. People who love you, circumstances that are objectively decent, a life that from the outside looks like one that should produce contentment, and being unable to access happiness inside those conditions produces this specific, uncomfortable feeling. Not just the absence of happiness, but the guilt about the absence. The sense that you should be happy, that the conditions warrant it, that something is wrong with you for not feeling what the circumstances should be producing. That guilt is understandable. And it's also not helpful. Happiness is not produced by conditions. Conditions enable it, but they don't generate it. You can be in objectively good circumstances and be unable to access ease if the management layer is thick enough, if the processing backlog is heavy enough, if the surveillance is running at high enough intensity. The gap between what your life looks like and what it feels like is not ingratitude. It's information about a specific internal state that needs attention. And the guilt about the gap makes the gap harder to close. Because guilt is a layer on top of the management and the unprocessed weight and all the other things already on top of the happiness. It's additional weight on an already substantial pile, and carrying it doesn't produce the happiness any faster, it just makes the pile heavier. You're allowed to not be happy even when things are objectively okay. You're allowed to be in the process of finding your way back to it without having to justify the process to anyone, including yourself. Here's something I want to say specifically about the moments when it briefly comes back. You have them. Even now, even in the midst of whatever has gotten between you and ease, there are moments, usually unexpected, usually when you're too absorbed in something to be monitoring, where the management briefly stops and something lighter comes through. The laugh that arrived before you could think about it. The conversation that pulled you in so completely that for 10 minutes you forgot to observe yourself having it. The thing that happened that was just good, simply quietly, unremarkably good, and then the awareness kicks in. The noticing. And with the noticing comes something that steals the moment. Either the bracing for it to end, or the wondering why it can't always be like this, or the analysis of what produced it so you can replicate it, or just the general surveillance brain coming back online. And the moment gets consumed before it's finished. What I want you to try is staying in the moment for one beat longer than the analysis wants to start. Not forever. Not a whole transformation of how you process experience. Just one breath and the good thing before you start thinking about the good thing. Because those moments are the path back. Not grand gestures, not dramatic interventions, not the decision to be happy, the accumulated experience of small moments of ease that you stay in long enough for them to register. That teach your nervous system slowly and through experience rather than intention. That ease is possible, that the ground is stable enough to relax into, that the management can stand down briefly without the world ending. That's how it comes back, in increments, through the moments you actually let yourself have. Let me talk about what actually restores, not in a prescriptive way, in the way that specific things work for the specific kind of depleted that produces this particular forgetting. Rest that is actually rest, not time off that you spend catching up or processing or preparing for what comes next. Time that has no purpose, that doesn't produce anything. That just allows your system to be without needing to do anything with the being. That kind of rest is deeply uncomfortable if you've been in management mode long enough. It will feel like wasted time, like you should be using this space for something, like the absence of productivity is itself a problem. That discomfort is the management brain protesting. Stay in the rest anyway. Expression of the unprocessed things, not necessarily through talking, through whatever form lets the backlog move. Writing, movement, music, the specific creative form that has always felt like a clearing rather than a constructing. The accumulated unexpressed weight needs somewhere to go. Not all at once, just enough regular movement that it doesn't keep accumulating faster than it drains. Genuine presence with people who are genuinely good for you. Not performance of presence, not the managed version of connection. Actual arrival with someone who doesn't require the performance. Someone with whom the surveillance can go down a little. Someone whose presence makes the management less necessary rather than more. Those people exist in your life probably. Finding time with them, real time not passing time, is part of the path. In contact with the things you actually love. Not the things you should love or the things that used to be productive or the things that make you look like the right kind of person. The things that pull you in without effort, that engage you without management, that remind your nervous system of what interest and genuine pleasure feel like. However small they are, however much they don't seem to matter, they matter specifically because they don't need to matter. Because the things that don't need to produce anything are the only ones with the right quality of ease to let the deeper things surface. You didn't forget how to be happy. You got too busy managing to access it. Too far into the weight of everything that needed carrying to feel what was underneath the weight. Too practiced at getting through things to feel what it's like to just be in things. The happiness is still there, not as a fixed state waiting to be recovered, as a quality of experience that becomes available when the management eases enough for it to surface, when the processing backlog lightens enough to clear some space, when the surveillance runs quiet enough for the present to become inhabitable. It comes back, not in one moment of decision, in the accumulation of small moments where you let yourself be in something instead of through something. Where you stay in the good moment for one breath longer than the analysis. Where you do the thing that doesn't need to produce anything because doing it feels like the first real thing in a while. That's how you find your way back. Not by deciding to be happy. By creating the conditions in which happy becomes possible again. And then letting it arrive. Without rushing it. Without managing it back out of existence the moment it shows up. Just letting it be there. The way it used to be. The way it will be. When you stop trying so hard to make it happen and start making space for it to arrive. It always hits me hardest when the world is quiet. During the day there's noise, people around me, work, texts, errands, responsibilities. There's a rhythm to life, a way to keep moving without thinking too much. But night doesn't let you hide. Night strips everything down to its raw edges. The first few nights after we broke up, I didn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of my own breathing. And in that silence, every memory comes rushing back sharp and uninvited. The way she laughed, the way her hair caught the light, the little habits I used to love, the way we used to talk late into the night, the plans we made that will never happen. It's cruel how the world can be so normal around you when your heart is unraveling. People keep scrolling, keep texting, keep living, and you're there still holding pieces of someone who's gone. During the day, I can pretend. I can distract myself with music, with conversation, with work. I can laugh, I can make plans, I can convince myself I'm fine. But at night, all that pretense evaporates. Night doesn't let you lie to yourself. Night makes the absence louder than any noise, the longing sharper than any pain. And it's not just sadness, it's that hollow ache in your chest, the one that doesn't have words, the one that sits there quiet and steady, reminding you of everything you lost. And in that stillness, you start to question yourself. Did I love too much? Did I care too much? Was I not enough? Could I have done something differently? You replay the conversations, the good nights, the fights, the silences. You try to find the exact moment it all went wrong, the exact word, the exact choice. And no matter how much you search, it doesn't matter. Because sometimes it's not about what you did. It's not about what they did. It's just that some things aren't meant to last. And yet night doesn't care about meaning. Night just opens the wound wider, just reminds you that the one person you wanted to stay is no longer there. That's when it hit me. The nights weren't making me weaker. They were showing me what I hadn't been willing to face during the day. I started noticing patterns in the way I thought about her, the way I checked my phone hoping for a message that would never come, the way I replayed our last conversation, analyzing every pause, every word, every okay that felt heavier than it should, the way I imagined a different outcome, as if wishing hard enough could rewrite reality. I realized that part of the pain came from me giving her more than I gave myself. I cared so deeply that I lost track of my own needs. I bent over backward to match her energy,
to prove my love, to anticipate her feelings, and now without her that imbalance became painfully clear. My heart was trained to give, but not always to protect itself. I saw how I had been chasing consistency from someone who couldn't offer it, how I had built a world where her approval mattered more than my own peace, and suddenly the nights made sense. They weren't just lonely, they were mirrors. Mirrors reflecting the patterns I had repeated for years, the ways I gave too much, the ways I stayed too long. It wasn't that I wasn't enough. It wasn't that I didn't deserve love. It was that I loved someone who wasn't ready to stay. Someone whose absence left more than just silence. It left a gap where I had invested too much, too quickly, too fully. And in that reflection, there was also clarity. Pain was teaching me about my boundaries, about the difference between care and overcare, about the value of giving love to those who could meet me halfway, not just taking it for granted. Night became less of a punishment and more of a teacher. Each hour spent awake, each tear shed, each memory revisited was a lesson in self-awareness. I realized I couldn't force someone to stay. I couldn't bend my heart around their hesitations or their inability to commit, and as much as it hurt, understanding that was freeing. It was the first step toward protecting myself, the first step toward respecting my own heart as much as I had respected hers. The nights still hurt, but now they carried meaning. They weren't just reminders of loss, they were reminders of growth, reminders that my love had been real, that my care had been deep, that my heart was capable of giving fully. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to learn how to give it to myself as well. The first nights I tried to change how I felt, I failed. I thought maybe I could trick my heart, distract my mind, or numb the ache with noise and movement. But grief isn't a problem you solve. It's a presence you sit with until it no longer controls you. So I started small. I stopped rereading old messages. I stopped imagining her next move, stopped hoping for signs, stopped reaching into the empty space she left behind. I deleted the photos I didn't need, muted the notifications I compulsively checked, and told myself the truth. She isn't coming back. Not the way I imagined, not the way I wanted. I began creating boundaries I had never known I deserved. Boundaries that weren't about anger or bitterness, but about self-respect. I stopped answering when I didn't want to, stopped chasing conversations that led nowhere, stopped over-explaining my feelings to someone who couldn't hold them. I started giving my attention only to the people and things that reflected care back to me. And with those boundaries came a subtle power shift. I wasn't consumed by her absence anymore. The night still whispered her name, still nudged memories into sharp focus, but I was no longer collapsing under them. I observed the pain, acknowledged it, let it move through me, and then returned to myself. I was no longer the person bending, waiting, and stretching my heart to fit someone else's inconsistency. I was steady, I was anchored. I replaced desperation with selectiveness. I matched energy instead of chasing it. I learned that showing care didn't require sacrificing my own peace. I realized that being alone at night didn't have to be punishment. It could be reflection, a time to breathe, a space to understand my own heart. The nights didn't stop being lonely immediately. They never do. But now, the silence was softer. It was a quiet room where I could hear myself think, where I could notice patterns, where I could prepare to love again, not someone else, but myself first. The ache became tempered by clarity. The longing became tempered by choice. I realized that part of healing isn't forgetting, isn't rushing, isn't trying to feel normal again. Healing is learning how to stay whole even when the world is quiet. Healing is sitting with the hurt until it teaches you what it means to protect your heart, to honor your needs, and to see that love isn't a game of endurance. It's a reflection of mutual care, and you deserve to experience it fully with someone willing to meet you there. Night was no longer a place where I broke. It was where I built myself back up. Eventually the nights became quieter, not because the memories disappeared, but because I stopped letting them control me. I no longer felt like a ghost wandering through someone else's absence. Instead, I learned to exist fully in my own presence. I started noticing the small ways I reclaimed myself. I laughed without guilt. I made plans without hesitation. I let friends in without fear of being too much. I learned to fill the quiet with my own voice, not the echo of someone else's. And slowly I began to recognize a simple truth. The pain didn't break me. It refined me. I understood now that loving someone who couldn't stay wasn't a failure. It wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of timing, of readiness, of circumstances beyond my control. I had loved deeply, and that capacity for love remained mine. My heart was intact. My integrity was intact. And the nights, once a reminder of what I lost, became a testament to what I had survived. I still remember the ache, the longing, the late hours where silence felt heavier than anything else. But now that ache sits beside strength, not despair. I carry the lessons instead of the bitterness. I honor the love I gave, but I no longer tether my happiness to someone else's choices. I walk away from the nights with my head held higher, with patience, with calm, and with the knowledge that my heart is valuable enough to wait for someone who chooses me fully. It hurts, and it will hurt for a while, but it won't break me. Pain didn't claim me. It taught me. It sharpened my awareness. It taught me boundaries. It taught me self-respect. And most of all, it taught me that being alone at night doesn't mean being unloved. It means I'm ready to love myself fiercely, completely, without compromise. The nights are still there. They always will be, but I am no longer afraid of them. I am no longer haunted by what could have been. I am here. I am whole. And when morning comes, I rise, not as someone broken, but as someone who has endured. Someone who has grown, someone who is ready for what is meant to be, rather than clinging to what never was. Pain didn't break me, it refined me, and now I am ready. I think the hardest part about something ending is realizing it was already ending while you were still trying to save it. When I look back now, I can see it clearly. The small pauses, the delayed replies, the way their voice changed just slightly. Not enough to call it out, but enough to feel it. But back then, I called it stress. I called it timing. I called it, we're just going through a phase. Because admitting it wasn't meant to last would have meant admitting I was holding on to something already slipping through my hands. It didn't start badly. That's the thing. It started with intensity, with late night conversations that made sleep feel optional, with inside jokes that felt sacred, with that rush of feeling chosen, like out of everyone in the world, they saw me. And when you feel seen like that, you don't question it. You don't prepare for it to end. You just lean in. I leaned in fully. I memorized their patterns, their favorite songs, the way they said my name when they were tired. I built a version of the future in my head without even realizing it. Not a marriage and forever. Nothing dramatic, just consistency. Just comfort. Just them. Staying. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling like I was the only one building. They still talked to me, still laughed, still said the right things. But something was missing. Effort. And when effort slowly disappears, you start replacing it with your own. I texted first more often. I asked deeper questions. I reassured them when they seemed distant. I made excuses for their silence. They're just busy. They're going through something. It's not about you. And maybe it wasn't. But that didn't change the feeling. The subtle loneliness of being connected to someone who is already detaching. I felt it before I admitted it. That quiet instinct that whispers, this feels different now. But I ignored it because I didn't want to be dramatic. Because I didn't want to lose them. Because I thought love meant fighting harder when things got uncertain. What I didn't understand yet was that love isn't proven by how hard you fight alone. And sometimes something isn't falling apart because you didn't try enough. Sometimes it's falling apart because it was never meant to stay together. But I wasn't ready to accept that yet, so I stayed, and I tried, and I hoped, even when deep down a quiet part of me already knew this wasn't going to last. The realization didn't hit all at once. It wasn't some dramatic fight. No screaming, no slam doors, no final speech about how we want different things. It was quieter than that. It was in the space between texts, the way replies became shorter. The way conversations that used to flow for hours started feeling forced after 5 minutes. I remember staring at my phone one night, reading the same dry message over and over, trying to find hidden meaning in it. Maybe they were tired, maybe they didn't mean it that way, maybe I was overthinking. I was always the one overthinking. But overthinking only happens when something feels off, and something felt off. They didn't ask about my day the way they used to. They didn't notice small changes anymore. They didn't look at me the same. And when someone stops noticing you, that's when it starts ending. I tried to compensate. I became lighter, easier, less needy. I stopped bringing up things that bothered me. I told myself not to ruin the vibe. I convinced myself that if I could just be a little more patient, a little more understanding, a little less emotional, maybe it would go back to how it was. But here's the truth I didn't want to face. When something is fading, you can't love it back to life. You can't effort your way into someone's certainty. You can't compete with someone's indifference, and I started to feel tired. Not of them, but of carrying it. Carrying the conversations, carrying the reassurance, carrying the hope. It felt like holding water in my hands. The tighter I tried to grip it, the faster it slipped through my fingers. There was one moment I'll never forget. We were together, physically in the same space, but emotionally it felt like there was an ocean between us. They were talking, smiling, present, but not with me. And that's when it hit. You can feel alone even when someone is sitting right next to you. That kind of loneliness is different. It's heavy, because it forces you to admit something. You're fighting for something the other person already let go of. I went home that night with a quiet ache in my chest. Not heartbreak, not yet, just clarity trying to break through denial. I lay in bed replaying everything. The beginning, the excitement, the promises that weren't promises but felt like them. And for the first time, I allowed the thought to fully form. Maybe this isn't temporary. Maybe this isn't a phase. Maybe this is the end, just stretched out slowly so it doesn't look like one. And that's when the question changed. It stopped being, how do I fix this? And started becoming, why am I trying to save something that doesn't want to stay? That's a painful question, because once you ask it, you can't unsee the answer. And the answer was simple. It wasn't that I wasn't enough. It wasn't that I didn't try hard enough. It wasn't that I failed. It was that this, whatever it was never meant to last. And deep down, I think we both knew it. I was just the only one still trying to pretend otherwise. Letting go didn't happen the day it ended. It happened in layers. First, I stopped arguing in my head. I stopped replaying conversations, trying to decode where it shifted. I stopped rewriting the past to make it feel fixable. Because once you see something clearly, you can't go back to pretending. I realized I wasn't actually scared of losing them. I was scared of losing the version of myself that believed this was finally it. The version of me that thought, maybe this time it'll stay. That's what I was grieving. Not just the person, but the hope. And hope is harder to bury than people. At first, I wanted answers, closure, a clean explanation I could hold in my hands. But the truth is, not everything ends with clarity. Some things fade because they were only meant to teach you something, not stay with you forever. And when I finally stopped fighting the ending, something strange happened. I felt lighter, still sad, still disappointed, but lighter. Because I wasn't dragging something behind me anymore. I wasn't trying to convince someone to see my value. I wasn't overextending myself to maintain something that was already collapsing. I started noticing how much of myself I had minimized to make it work. How often I swallowed words. How often I acted unbothered. How often I accepted less than I needed just to avoid losing them. And that realization hurt, because it meant I wasn't just losing them. I had been losing myself too. But here's the part that changed everything. I didn't hate them. I didn't turn cold. I didn't decide love was stupid. I didn't convince myself I'd never care again. I just understood. Some people come into your life not to stay, but to show you what you tolerate, to show you how deeply you can love, to show you where your boundaries should have been. And once the lesson is learned, the connection has no more purpose. That doesn't make it meaningless, it just makes it temporary. I stopped romanticizing what it could have been. I stopped imagining alternate endings. I stopped wishing they would wake up one day and suddenly become the version I needed. Because if someone has to transform completely to love you properly, they were never aligned with you to begin with. Letting go wasn't loud, it was quiet. It was choosing not to text, not to check their social media, not to ask mutual friends how they were doing. It was choosing peace over curiosity. And slowly I started feeling like myself again. The version of me that didn't revolve around someone else's attention. The version of me that felt steady without external reassurance. The version of me that understood if it was meant to last, it wouldn't have required me to shrink. And that's when the bitterness disappeared. Because I wasn't rejected. I was redirected. It wasn't taken from me, it was removed. And there's a difference. I used to think every ending meant failure. Like if something didn't last, it must not have been real. Or I must not have tried hard enough. Or maybe I just wasn't enough to make someone stay. But now I see it differently. Some things are real even if they're temporary. Some connections are intense because they were never designed for longevity. They burn bright. They feel significant. They teach you something and then they end. Not because you ruined them. Not because they were fake, but because they fulfilled their purpose. It was never meant to last. And that doesn't make it a waste, it made it a chapter. I stopped asking, why didn't it work? And started asking, what did it teach me? It taught me how quickly I attach when I feel understood. It taught me how deeply I love when I feel chosen. It taught me how easily I ignore my intuition when I'm afraid to lose someone. But it also taught me something else. I don't want half effort. I don't want uncertainty disguised as mystery. I don't want potential. I want consistency. I want something that doesn't require me to question it every night. Something that doesn't feel like I'm constantly auditioning for reassurance. Something that doesn't slowly drain me while I call it love. And if that means some things end early, good. Because I'd rather something end than stay in a space where it was quietly deteriorating. I no longer romanticize what we could have been. Because what we could have been would have required them to become someone else. And love shouldn't require transformation to feel secure. It should feel aligned. Now when I look back, I don't feel anger. I feel gratitude. Gratitude that it didn't drag on longer than it needed to. Gratitude that it showed me my patterns. Gratitude that it forced me to raise my standards instead of lowering them further. The ending wasn't a punishment, it was protection. And maybe the most powerful realization of all is this. If it was meant to last, it would have required effort from both sides. It would have felt steady. It would have grown naturally instead of being forced. Love that's meant for you doesn't make you anxious. It doesn't make you question your worth. It doesn't slowly fade while you're fighting to keep it alive. It stays. And if it doesn't stay, let it go. Because not everything that feels intense is meant to be permanent. Some people are lessons, some are mirrors, some are reminders, and some are simply experiences that prepare you for something deeper. But it was never meant to last. And now, I'm finally okay with that. Not because it didn't matter, but because I matter more. I used to believe that some people were meant to be in your life forever. That once you found someone who felt like home, someone who made the world quiet and the chaos manageable, you'd never have to let them go. She was that person. Every laugh, every small touch, every moment we shared felt like proof that this was different, that this was real, that maybe, just maybe, this was the kind of love people write songs about. But the truth is, I stayed too long. I held on too tightly. I gave her all the parts of me I thought would make her stay, and somehow it wasn't enough. She started drifting, slowly, quietly. At first, it was easy to ignore. A missed call here, a delayed reply there. I told myself it was work, stress, life getting in the way. I rationalized everything. I convinced myself that if I just waited, if I just gave her space, everything would go back to the way it was. But space doesn't fix distance when someone doesn't want to bridge it. And then the signs became impossible to ignore. The way her energy shifted when I was around. The way her eyes no longer lingered. The way her voice sounded polite instead of soft. Like she was here, but not really. And that's when the doubt started. The questions that eat at you late at night. Was I not enough? Did I do something wrong? Did I miss a sign, a word, a glance that could have made her stay? I kept replaying every moment, every conversation, every laugh, trying to find the turning point, trying to figure out when exactly the person I thought I knew stopped feeling the same way. And slowly, painfully, I realized something that broke me in pieces. Love isn't always enough. Even when you care more, even when you give more, even when your heart is wide open, it's not a guarantee that the other person will choose you the way you choose them. I lost her, the girl of my dreams, the one I imagined a future with, the one who made everything feel possible. She's gone, and the worst part, she didn't leave with anger. She didn't leave with a fight. She left quietly, slowly, like the space between us stretched so wide that neither of us could cross it anymore. Now I sit with the emptiness, the ache of missing someone who no longer wants to be missed, the heaviness of realizing that some dreams don't last. And I have to ask myself the hardest question of all. How do I move on when she was everything I thought I wanted? That's when it hit me. It wasn't just that she left. It was that I had been holding on to a version of her that never truly existed. I realized I had been clinging to hope instead of reality, clinging to the idea of her, the idea of us, rather than seeing who she really was and how things truly were between us. I had given her my everything without ever stopping to ask if it was being received the way I imagined. I overanalyzed every text, every laugh, every small moment, trying to find meaning where maybe there wasn't any. And in the process, I lost myself a little. I saw patterns I had ignored because they were uncomfortable to face. The late replies, the canceled plans, the enthusiasm that faded when I needed it most, the way she only showed up when it was convenient for her. I had made excuses for her. I had rationalized it, told myself, maybe she's busy, maybe she's stressed, maybe she doesn't know how to say what she feels. But deep down, I knew the truth. She wasn't choosing me, and that's when the self-reflection got real. It wasn't that I wasn't enough. It wasn't that I loved too hard or too fast. It was that I was loving someone who wasn't ready, someone who couldn't meet me where I stood. I kept asking myself, why do I care so much about someone who doesn't care the same way? And the answer wasn't simple. I cared because I allowed myself to care. I cared because I invested my heart where it wasn't being nurtured. I cared because I believed in the what could be instead of the what is. I had been overgiving, overthinking, overhoping, and in the process I had allowed my happiness to hinge on someone else's choices. That was the real pattern, the dangerous one, the one that left me feeling empty, desperate, and questioning my worth. The realization was painful, but it was also freeing. It wasn't about blaming her, it wasn't about resenting her for leaving. It was about understanding how I got here, about seeing the ways I had let hope blind me to reality, about recognizing the parts of myself I needed to protect moving forward. It wasn't easy to admit, but I had to face it. I had to stop chasing someone who wasn't chasing me. I had to stop convincing myself that patience and loyalty could force love. I had to accept that sometimes, no matter how much you give, it just isn't enough. When you finally see the patterns, the truth isn't cruel. It's clear. And clarity is the first step toward moving on. The first step toward moving on wasn't forgetting her. It wasn't pretending I didn't care. It wasn't erasing the memories or the way my chest tightened every time her name appeared on my phone. The first step was deciding that I deserved clarity, respect, and reciprocity. I began setting boundaries, small ones at first. I stopped checking my phone obsessively. I stopped reading into her every word, every pause, every tiny signal. I stopped waiting for messages that might never come. I stopped hoping for a version of her that only existed in my mind. And in that space, this quiet, deliberate space, I started to notice something powerful. I could breathe again. I didn't need her validation to feel alive. I didn't need her attention to feel worthy. I didn't need her affection to prove my capacity to love. I began redirecting the energy I had spent on her, on analyzing, on rationalizing, on hoping, back into myself. I invested in the parts of me I had neglected. I did things that made me feel strong, whole, and alive again. I stopped over-explaining my feelings to her. I stopped justifying my worth to someone who had already made their choice. I stopped tolerating the moments of half-love, the silences that burned, the inconsistency that hurt. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to feel power returning to me. I observed my emotions instead of letting them control me. I matched energy where it existed, and I let go where it didn't. I realized that choosing myself didn't make me cold or bitter. It made me steady, grounded, and in control. I didn't turn my back on love. I turned my back on waiting for someone who couldn't meet me. I didn't stop caring. I stopped investing where care wasn't returned. I didn't stop hoping. I started hoping for something mutual, for a love that didn't feel like a battle of patience and perseverance. For the first time in a long while, I felt calm inside my own skin. I felt safe with my own heart. I felt like the person I had been before all the waiting, all the chasing, all the questioning. And that calm, that quiet strength was revolutionary because it showed me that I didn't need her to be complete, that I didn't need her to feel whole, that I could hold my own heart and protect it without shame or guilt. I started seeing my past love not as a failure, but as preparation, as a lesson in what I would and wouldn't accept, as a reminder that my heart is powerful, but it deserves reciprocity, not half measures. The more I honored my boundaries, the more I recognized my worth. The more I invested in myself, the less I ached for what wasn't mine to hold. And in that space, I started feeling free. Eventually, the ache softened. Not because I forgot her, not because I stopped caring, but because I stopped letting her absence define me. I realized that moving on wasn't about erasing what we had. It wasn't about pretending the late nights, the small laughs, the moments I thought would last forever never happened. It was about carrying them differently, without letting them weigh me down, without letting them keep me from living. I started living for me, not in a loud, dramatic way, not to prove anything to anyone. I lived for the quiet moments where I could feel myself again, the mornings where I woke up without the heaviness of waiting, the evenings where I went to bed proud of how I spent my day instead of consumed by what could have been. And in that space, I discovered something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't angry, I wasn't trapped in what I had lost. I was steady, I was clear, I was open to life again. I realized the truth. Love isn't about holding on to someone who doesn't choose you. Love is about knowing your worth, protecting your heart, and being willing to step away when it isn't returned fully. Some people stay in your life forever, some leave quietly like she did, and that's okay. It doesn't diminish what you felt. It doesn't make your heart smaller or weaker, it makes you human. I learned to honor the love I gave her by giving that same love to myself. I stopped chasing what wasn't meant for me and started chasing clarity, joy, and connection that was mutual. I began to trust that the right people would meet me where I stood, fully, consistently, willingly. And so I moved on, not with resentment, not with regret, but with quiet confidence. I moved on knowing that the girl of my dreams wasn't lost. She simply wasn't the one for me. And that was enough, because the truth is, letting go isn't giving up. It's making space for something real, something that doesn't require hope to fill in the gaps, something that chooses you as fully as you choose it. And now I'm ready. Pain didn't break me. It refined me. Loss didn't define me. It prepared me. And moving on isn't the end. It's the beginning. I stayed, I learned, I grew, and now I'm alive again. This one is going to be uncomfortable. Not because I'm going to be cruel about it. Not because I think you're a bad person or that you deserve to hurt more than you already do, but because I think you've been telling yourself a story about what happened. A very comfortable, very sympathetic, very well-constructed story. And I think that story is costing you more than the heartbreak itself. And I'd rather say the hard thing than watch you carry a version of events that keeps you stuck. So, here it is. Some of what happened was your fault. Not all of it, maybe not even most of it, but some of it. A real, significant, honest sum, and you know that. Somewhere underneath the narrative you've been running, underneath the anger and the grief and the very reasonable pain, you know that you had a hand in this. You know there were things you did or didn't do, patterns you ran, moments where you chose the comfortable thing over the right thing, and that those choices contributed to the ending. And instead of sitting with that, you've been covering it, building a story around the parts that make you the injured party. Collecting evidence for the version where this was done to you, not participated in by you. I understand why. I really do. Grief is hard enough without also having to hold accountability for it. When something ends and it hurts this much, the last thing you want to do is look at your own role in the wreckage. But the coping, the stories, the justifications, the careful editing of memory, that's not protecting you. That's just delaying the thing that would actually help. Let me tell you what the coping sounds like. Because I think a lot of us do this without fully recognizing it as what it is. It sounds like they were emotionally unavailable, which may be true, but it doesn't ask the question of why you stayed with someone emotionally unavailable for as long as you did. It doesn't ask what that unavailability was doing for you, whether it let you stay at a safe distance too, whether it meant you never had to be feely seen, whether their unavailability was, on some level, a feature rather than a bug. It sounds like they didn't appreciate me, which may also be true, but it doesn't ask whether you made yourself easy to appreciate, whether you communicated what you needed clearly, whether you showed up as the full version of yourself or a managed, careful version designed to be likable, whether you were actually present in the relationship or just there. It sounds like I gave everything and got nothing back. And I want to be careful here because sometimes this is just true. Full stop. and you really were in something that took without returning. But sometimes, I gave everything as covering for something else. Sometimes giving everything is a way of controlling the dynamic. Sometimes the constant giving is designed unconsciously to put the other person in debt, to make leaving harder for them, to build a case in advance for why you're the good one if this falls apart. Giving can be generous. Giving can also be a strategy, and only you know which one it was. It sounds like they changed, but people don't usually change in a vacuum. Relationships change people. Your behavior in the relationship changes people. The environment you two created together changes both of you. When someone becomes distant or cold or checked out, it's worth asking, genuinely, honestly asking, what the environment was like. What was it like to be with you when things were hard? What they were responding to. I'm not saying it was your fault they changed. I'm saying change doesn't happen in isolation, and the story that casts you as the passive witness to someone else's transformation is probably missing some of your own. Here's the thing about the comfortable story. The one where you're the one who tried and they're the one who failed. The one where the ending is their fault and your pain is entirely undeserved and there's nothing to examine on your end. That story feels better in the short term. Of course it does. It protects you from the really uncomfortable work of looking at yourself clearly. It lets you stay in the grief without having to complicate it with accountability. It lets you be sad without also having to be honest. But it has a cost, a specific, measurable cost. The cost is that you take nothing from this into the next thing. You exit this relationship with the same patterns, the same blind spots, the same tendencies that contributed to the ending. Because you never looked at them, you never identified them, you never held them up to the light and said, this is a me thing, this is something I do, this needs to change, and then you do it again. Different person, same dynamic, different face on the same shape of relationship, and it ends the same way. And you tell the same story again, and the story protects you again, and you take nothing again. That loop is why some people go their entire lives in relationships that follow the same pattern and never understand why. Not because they're unlucky, because they're very good at being the protagonist of a story that never asks them to grow. I want to be specific about some of the things we do, the actual behaviors, because I think naming them is more useful than speaking in abstractions. We go cold when we should go honest. Something bothers us and something real and something worth addressing, and instead of saying it clearly, we pull back. We get quieter. We create distance. We let the temperature in the room drop and wait for the other person to notice and ask. And when they don't ask, or when they ask wrong or not enough or in the wrong tone, we take that as evidence that they don't care. When really what happened is we asked them to read our minds and they failed a test they didn't know they were taking. We punish in small ways. We're less warm after a fight. We remember and bring it up later. We keep score and then act like we're not keeping score. We do the thing where we say, I'm fine, while very clearly not being fine, and then resent them for believing us. We pick the wrong moments to be honest and then wonder why honesty doesn't go well. We drop something heavy right when they're stressed or exhausted or in the middle of something. And when the conversation doesn't go the way we needed, we add it to the list of evidence that they can't handle us, that they don't prioritize our feelings, that they're not equipped for this relationship. We confuse intimacy with intensity. We think fighting means we care. We think drama means depth. We manufacture urgency in relationships that are actually healthy and stable because health and stability feel boring, feel unfamiliar, feel like the absence of passion rather than the presence of something real. We love loudly in the beginning and quietly disappear as it gets more real. We're incredibly present and attentive in the early phase, and then once we feel secure, we coast. We stop putting in the effort that got us here because we think arrival means the work is done. It doesn't. Arrival is when the work starts. We make the other person responsible for our emotional state. When we're happy, it's because of them, and we tell them so. But when we're anxious or insecure or struggling, that's also because of them. Their behavior, their distance, something they did or didn't do. We make them the weather of our inner life and then resent them for not always being sunny. We leave before we leave. We check out emotionally while still physically present. We stop investing in the thing months before it technically ends, and then when it ends, we act like we were fully in it right up to the last moment. We weren't. We'd already started protecting ourselves from a loss we were quietly engineering. Any of that land. Here's what I think is actually underneath the coping, because I don't think it's dishonesty. Exactly. I don't think most people sit down and consciously decide to distort what happened. I think it's fear. Specifically the fear that if you look at your role clearly, if you actually account for your part of the wreckage, you'll find something unfixable, something fundamentally wrong with you, some evidence that you are, at your core, the kind of person who ruins things, who doesn't know how to love correctly, who is too much or not enough or broken in some way that won't yield to effort. That's the fear underneath the story. The story protects you from having to find out if that fear is true. But here's what I want you to hear. Actually hear it. Looking at your part in something doesn't mean confirming your worst fears about yourself. It just means looking at behaviors, patterns, choices, things you did in specific moments for specific reasons that you can understand and, if you choose to, change. You are not your worst moments in a relationship. You are also not separate from them. They're data. They tell you something about where you were, what you needed, how you were operating, and that information is genuinely useful if you let yourself have it. The fear says if I look honestly, I'll find out I'm irredeemable. The truth is, if you look honestly, you'll find out you're human, imperfect and patterned, and sometimes self-protective in ways that hurt other people, just like every person who has ever been in a relationship. That's not a verdict, that's a starting point. Let me talk about what accountability actually looks like, because I think people avoid it partly because they imagine it as this punishing, self-flagellating thing, like looking honestly at yourself means spending months in a shame spiral, rehashing everything you did wrong, deciding you're terrible. That's not accountability, that's just shame with better lighting. Real accountability is quieter than that. It looks more like sitting down at some point when the sharpest grief has passed and asking yourself some honest questions, not rhetorical ones designed to confirm a narrative, actual ones. What did I do in this relationship that I wouldn't want someone to do to me? Not the obvious stuff, not the big fights or the bad days. The small, consistent stuff. The daily texture of how I showed up. What did I know was wrong and keep doing anyway? What did I avoid saying because saying it would have required me to change something I wasn't ready to change? Where was I unfair? Not just in the moments I already know about, the ones I've been editing out of the version I tell people. What did this person need from me that I wasn't willing to give? And was it actually something I couldn't give? Or just something I chose not to? Those questions are hard. They're supposed to be hard. But they're also genuinely useful in a way that no amount of righteous anger about what they did to you ever will be. Because the answers to those questions travel with you. They're portable. They go into the next relationship and make you better at it. They turn heartbreak into something that costs you once instead of costing you every time. There's one more thing I want to name before we get to the other side of this, and it's the one that's hardest to say because it implicates something we don't like to look at. Sometimes the coping isn't just about protecting yourself from accountability. Sometimes it's about protecting your image of yourself as a good person, as someone who loves well, as someone who, when relationships end, can look back and genuinely say, I tried, I was present, I gave it everything. That image matters to a lot of us, more than we admit. We want to be the person who loved honestly and got hurt anyway, not the person who contributed to their own heartbreak through avoidable choices. We want to be the protagonist of a love story, not the cautionary tale. And so we protect the image. We curate the memory. We tell the story to friends in a way that quietly omits the parts where we weren't our best selves. And slowly, through repetition, we start to believe the curated version. It becomes the real one. The messy, complicated actual version gets buried under the one that makes us look okay. But you can't grow from a version of yourself that you've cleaned up for public consumption. You grow from the real one, the one that includes the moments you're not proud of, the one that captures not just what happened, but how you made people feel, the one that honestly accounts for what you brought into the room, the insecurity, the patterns, the defense mechanisms, the ways you protected yourself that accidentally hurt someone else. And that version isn't shameful, it's just true. And truth is the only thing you can actually work with. I want to say something about the grief, because I don't want this to feel like I'm dismissing it. Your pain is real. Whatever happened, however complicated your role in it, the loss is real and the hurt is real, and you are allowed to feel all of it without having to earn it through perfect behavior. You don't have to have been blameless to deserve to grieve. The grief and the accountability can exist at the same time. In fact, I think that's the only way to actually heal from something like this, not choosing between feeling it and examining it, but doing both. Letting yourself hurt fully while also slowly, with compassion for yourself, looking at what's yours to own. Because the coping and the comfortable story, the edited version, it doesn't actually protect you from the pain. It just reroutes it. You still feel it, you still carry it. You just carry it alongside a story that keeps you from understanding it. And understanding it is what lets you put it down eventually. Not the story, the actual thing. The real account of what happened, your role in theirs, what was real and what was projected, what was love and what was fear wearing love's clothes. That understanding is the only version of this that leads somewhere. The story just leads back to the same place. So stop coping, or start slowly to stop. Not all at once, not by burning down every comforting thing you've been telling yourself in the one brutal session of self-examination. That's not useful either. Just start making room. Start allowing the possibility that the story you've been telling isn't the whole story. Start letting the questions in, not to punish yourself, but because you are curious about yourself and you deserve to know yourself accurately. Start being as honest with yourself about your own behavior as you are about theirs. Because here's what's true. The heartbreak you're carrying right now and the real weight of it, the part that won't quite heal, I don't think it's only about them. I think some of it is about you. About things you did that you wish you'd done differently. About the person you were in this relationship that you don't fully want to be. You know that. You've known it. You've just been covering it with everything else because sitting with it is hard and sitting with it feels like losing. But it's not losing, it's the beginning of actually getting somewhere. The pain doesn't go away when you stop coping, but it changes shape. It becomes something you can hold and look at and learn from instead of something that just lives in you without meaning. And meaning is the only thing that makes any of this worth what it cost. You already paid. You might as well take what you bought. There's a moment after a relationship ends that nobody really prepares you for. It's not the breakup itself. It's what happens after. When everything gets quiet. That's when your mind starts doing something you can't seem to stop. You replay it. The conversations, the moments, the little details that didn't seem important at the time. Your brain starts going back through everything like it's searching for something you missed. You think about the way they said certain things, the tone in their voice during that one argument, the night things felt slightly different but you couldn't explain why. And suddenly those memories feel heavier than they did before, because now you're looking at them with the one thing you didn't have back then, the ending. So your mind keeps asking questions. Was that the moment things started going wrong? Was that when they stopped feeling the same way? Was there something I could have said differently? Something I could have done better? And the worst part is you never get answers. So instead, your brain keeps replaying the same scenes over and over again. Like if you analyze it enough times, you'll finally find the explanation that makes everything make sense. But it never really works that way. Because breakups don't usually come from one single moment. They come from 1,000 small things building up quietly over time. Still, that doesn't stop your mind from trying, late at night especially, when the distractions are gone, when your phone isn't buzzing, when the room is dark, when it's just you and your thoughts. That's when the memories get the loudest. You remember the good moments first, the way they used to laugh, the way they looked at you when things were still easy, the little routines you built together without even realizing it. And for a second, it almost feels like they're still there. Then reality comes back, and your mind jumps to the next question. What did I do wrong? Because when someone you loved walks away, it's almost impossible not to assume that somewhere along the way, you messed it up. So you go back through everything again, trying to find the exact moment where things could have been saved. But the truth is, the more you replay it in your head, the more trapped you start to feel in something that already ended. And that's the part nobody talks about. Sometimes the relationship doesn't end when the person leaves. Sometimes it ends weeks later, when you finally stop reliving it. The strange thing about replaying a relationship in your head is that your mind doesn't show you the whole story. It shows you selected scenes, little moments that suddenly feel way more important than they did at the time. You remember the last conversation you had with them. Every word, every pause, every sentence you wish you could take back. You start thinking about what would have happened if you just said something different. Maybe if you had stayed calmer. Maybe if you didn't bring up that one thing. Maybe if you gave them more space. your brain turns it into this giant what if loop. What if I did this differently? What if I handled that moment better? What if I noticed the signs earlier? And slowly, without even realizing it, you start rewriting the past in your head. You create these alternate versions of the relationship where everything works out. In those versions, you say the perfect thing. You catch the problems early, you fix the issues before they grow. And in those imaginary timelines, they stay. But reality doesn't work like that. The real relationship didn't have the benefit of hindsight. It was messy. It had misunderstandings. Moments where both of you were tired. Conversations that didn't go the way either of you wanted. And the truth is, two people can genuinely care about each other and still not be able to make it work. But your brain doesn't like accepting that, because accepting that means admitting something painful. Sometimes there wasn't a single moment you could have fixed. Sometimes the ending wasn't about one mistake. It was about two people who just couldn't meet each other where they needed to. Still, your mind keeps searching, because if you can find the moment where everything went wrong, it gives you the illusion that you had control, that maybe you could have prevented the ending. But deep down, you already know something that's hard to accept. If someone was truly meant to stay, the relationship wouldn't collapse because of one imperfect conversation. Love that lasts doesn't disappear over one moment. And when you finally start realizing that, something shifts. The memories don't disappear overnight. You'll still think about them sometimes. But slowly, you stop treating every memory like a clue in a mystery you need to solve. Because some stories don't need to be solved. They just need to be closed. The hardest part about replaying everything in your head is that you think you're searching for closure. But most of the time, you're actually just reopening the wound. Every time you revisit the memories, you're putting yourself back in those moments again. Back in the conversations, back in the arguments, back in the days when things started feeling different, and your brain keeps asking the same question. Why? Why did they stop loving me? Why did things change? Why wasn't I enough for them to stay? But here's the thing about closure. A lot of people think closure comes from the other person explaining everything perfectly. They imagine one final conversation where the other person sits down and says exactly what happened, exactly why things ended, and somehow that explanation makes the pain disappear. But real life rarely works like that. Most endings don't come with perfect explanations. Sometimes people don't even fully understand their own reasons. Sometimes they just feel something change inside them. And that's a terrifying thing to accept. Because if love can change without a clear explanation, then it means there wasn't necessarily a moment you could have prevented. And that's what your mind is trying to fight against. Your mind keeps replaying everything because it wants control. It wants to believe there was a specific moment where the outcome could have been different. But the truth that hurts the most is this. Not every ending is caused by a mistake. Sometimes two people just reach a point where they can't continue together. Not because one of them failed, not because one of them wasn't good enough, but because the relationship itself couldn't keep going. And once that happens, no amount of replaying the past will change it. No amount of analyzing old conversations will bring the person back. All it does is keep you emotionally tied to something that already ended. That's why healing doesn't start when the breakup happens. Healing starts when you stop trying to solve the past. When you finally allow yourself to accept something difficult, the relationship is over. And even though your mind keeps pulling you back into those memories, your life is still moving forward. Whether you're ready for it or not, at some point you start noticing something. The memories aren't hurting you the same way they used to. Not because they disappeared, but because you finally stopped treating them like something you need to fix. For a long time, your mind kept going back to the same moments. The last argument, the last message, the last time you saw them. Like if you could just understand it perfectly, the pain would finally make sense. But eventually you realized something important. You weren't replaying it because the answer was still there. You were replaying it because letting go felt like losing them all over again. So part of you held on, not to the relationship itself, but to the idea that maybe you could still figure it out. Maybe if you understood what went wrong, it would somehow undo the ending. But life doesn't give us that kind of control. Some people enter your life, change you in ways you didn't expect, and then they leave. And you don't always get a clean explanation. You don't always get a moment where everything makes sense. Sometimes all you get is time to slowly accept that the story already reached its ending. And when you finally stop replaying it in your head, you start noticing something else. Your life didn't end with that relationship. There are still new people you haven't met, new memories you haven't made, new moments waiting for you that have nothing to do with the past you've been stuck in. Because the truth is, you were never meant to spend the rest of your life trapped in old conversations or wondering about the words you wish you said differently. You were meant to keep living, and one day, without even realizing when it happened, you'll think about them again. But this time it won't feel like a wound. It'll just feel like a chapter of your life that already ended. And you'll finally understand something that once felt impossible. The past only has power over you, as long as you keep replaying it.
What if everything was okay? I want you to sit with that question for a second before we go anywhere. Not as a rhetorical thing, not as the opening move of a piece that's about to tell you why everything actually isn't okay and here's what you should do about it. Just as an actual question, a real one. What if everything was okay? What if the text meant nothing? What if the quiet was just quiet? What if the distance you've been feeling was just life being life, and not a signal that something is ending or unraveling or quietly moving away from you? What if the job was actually fine, the relationship was actually fine, the version of yourself you've been worrying about was actually closer to fine than the version your brain has been showing you at 2 a.m.? What if you've been living a problem that doesn't exist? I know how that sounds. I know some of you are reading that and thinking, but the problem is real. The thing I'm worried about is real. I'm not making this up. And you might be right. Some of what you're carrying is real. I'm not dismissing that. But I want to ask the question anyway, because I think for a lot of us, more of us than we'd like to admit, the answer to what if everything was okay is something we haven't let ourselves fully consider, something that feels almost dangerous to believe. Because if everything is okay, then all the energy we've spent managing the ways it isn't was wasted. And if it was wasted, what does that say about how we've been living? That's the question underneath the question, and it's worth sitting with. Let me start with why okay is so hard to trust. Because I don't think the difficulty is random. I don't think you distrust okay because you're irrational or neurotic or constitutionally incapable of peace. I think you distrust okay because okay has been taken away from you before. In specific moments with specific people, and circumstances that started as fine and turned into something else without sufficient warning. You were okay once and then you weren't. And the transition happened fast enough or without enough signal that your nervous system made a note. The note said, okay is temporary. Okay is the thing that exists right before something changes. Okay is not a stable state, it's a phase, a corridor, a brief pause between the last hard thing and the next one. And so you stopped being able to fully inhabit okay, because inhabiting it fully means trusting it. And trusting it means being exposed when it ends. And being exposed when it ends, being surprised by the loss, being caught without your guard up, being genuinely blindsided by something you could have been preparing for. That has happened before and the cost was significant. So you stay slightly ahead of okay. You scan the horizon. You monitor for the thing that's going to end the good period. Because if you can see it coming, you can be ready. And being ready is the closest thing to safe that your nervous system knows how to do. That's not a flaw. That's a perfectly rational adaptation to a history that trains you to expect disruption. The problem is that the adaptation is now running in environments that don't require it. In relationships and circumstances that are actually stable. In moments of genuine okay that you are moving through without being able to feel them because the monitoring never stops. Here's what living outside of okay actually looks like. The daily texture of it. Because I think when it's named specifically, the recognition is useful. It looks like being 3 conversations ahead. The thing being said right now is barely registering, because you're already running the implications, already following the thread to its possible ends, already preparing responses to versions of this conversation that haven't happened. And the person talking to you, the actual person, in this actual moment, is getting a version of presence that is actually absence dressed up as listening. It looks like waiting for the other shoe to drop and cite good things. The relationship is going well. And somewhere in you, there's a quiet countdown. The job is stable, and part of you is already practicing what it would feel like if it wasn't. The friendship is real and warm, and you're enjoying it with one eye on the exit, because people leave, and you've learned not to be surprised when they do. You're enjoying things with a built-in distance, a slight remove, a refusal to fully arrive because fully arrive is what you do right before you get hurt. It looks like being unable to receive good things cleanly. A compliment arrives, and something in you immediately starts auditing it. Is it true? What did they want? Why are they saying this now? The compliment is real. You can probably tell it's real, but your brain has developed a processing step between receiving and believing that almost nothing gets through cleanly. You're filtering the good stuff. You've built infrastructure specifically designed to make the good stuff less able to reach you. And it looks like exhaustion that doesn't make sense on paper. Your life from the outside is fine. Nothing catastrophic is happening. You're managing. But you're tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix because you've been working overtime on threat detection. that hasn't found a real threat in a while and doesn't know how to stand down. I want to talk about what you're missing while you're not in okay. Not in an accusatory way, not in a you're wasting your life way, just the specific things that are happening in the present tense that you're not fully experiencing because part of your attention is elsewhere. You're missing the ease of the people who love you, the specific quality of being with someone who is genuinely glad you're there. Not performing gladness, not being polite, but actually lit up by your presence in a way that doesn't require anything from you except to just be there. That quality is available to you in relationships you already have, and you're experiencing it at about 60% because 40% of you is monitoring whether it's going to last. You're missing your own good moments, the times when something funny happens and you laugh, really laugh, the involuntary kind. And for a second, you're completely in it. And then the brain catches up and starts analyzing what the laughter means and whether it's appropriate and what comes next. And the moment is gone before you even registered having it. You've been having your experiences slightly after the fact, processing them as they pass rather than inhabiting them as they happen. You're missing the specific piece of a Tuesday that is just a Tuesday, not building toward anything, not the calm before something. Just a day that is what it is, the coffee in the morning, the particular quality of afternoon light, the conversation that doesn't go anywhere important and doesn't need to, the completely ordinary hours that make up most of a life and that you've been moving through like a waiting room instead of like the actual content of being alive. Those things are your life, not the milestone moments, not the dramatic events, not the things worth reporting when someone asks how you've been. The Tuesdays, the ordinary good things that don't make the highlight reel but constitute most of the hours. You've been in those hours. You've just not been fully present for them. Here's a question I want to ask, and I want you to actually think about it rather than answering reflexively. What would you have to give up if everything was okay? Because I don't think the resistance to okay is purely unconscious. I think there are specific things that the not okay serves. And until those things are named, the okay is going to keep being hard to access. Some people would have to give up their explanation. The story of why things aren't working, why they haven't arrived where they wanted to be, why the relationships keep going the way they go. The not okay is doing real narrative work. It explains the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be. If everything was okay, the gap would have to be explained some other way, and the other way might require looking at choices rather than circumstances. That's a harder look. Some people would have to give up their vigilance, the monitoring, the scanning, the constant low-grade preparedness for things going wrong. And the vigilance, while exhausting, is also a kind of purpose, a job. It gives you something to do with the part of you that can't be still. If everything was okay, that part would have to find somewhere else to go. And somewhere else feels like nowhere. Some people would have to give up their identity as someone who is going through something. The person in the hard season has a specific kind of meaning attached to their struggle. People check on you. You have something real to work through. Your life has a kind of weight to it that disappears if everything is okay. And the absence of weight, the lightness of things actually being fine, can feel strangely like loss, like you've been demoted from something significant to something ordinary. None of that is shameful. All of it is human. But it's worth naming, because the okay is going to keep feeling threatening until you understand what its arrival would cost. I want to say something about the relationship between okay and love, because I think this is where the distrust of okay does the most quiet damage. Love, real love, exists mostly in the okay moments, not in the dramatic ones, not in the fights and the reconciliations and the intensity and the moments of crisis that bring people back to each other. Those moments are real and they have their own meaning, but they're not where love actually lives day to day. Love lives in the Tuesday morning, in the way someone hands you something without being asked, in the conversation that goes nowhere in particular but leaves you feeling known, and the specific comfort of being in a room with someone and not needing the room to be anything other than what it is. Those moments are okay moments. Quiet, ordinary, unremarkable. And if you can't trust okay, if you're always monitoring from a slight distance, always waiting for the texture to change, you're moving through the place where love actually lives without being able to feel it. You're loving people from behind glass. The warmth is real, the connection is real, but you're not quite in contact with it, and the person loving you back can feel that, not as something you're doing wrong, as a distance it can't quite close, as a reaching that never quite lands. And they keep trying. The good ones keep trying. But at some point, being unable to reach someone who is physically present becomes its own kind of lonely. You're not protecting them from your uncertainty. You're keeping them from the version of you that could actually be reached. Let me say something about the version of you that exists when you're actually in okay. The one that doesn't have to be managed into being, that just shows up when the monitoring goes quiet long enough. That version is lighter. Not in a way that lacks depth, in a way that isn't carrying extra weight. It moves through rooms differently. It's more present in conversations because it isn't running parallel processing on what the conversation might mean. It laughs more freely because it isn't checking whether the laughter is appropriate. It reaches for people more naturally because it isn't first assessing the risk of the reaching. You've been that version before. In the moments when the vigilance broke down not because you decided to let it, but because something pulled you fully into the present before the monitoring could catch up. A piece of music. A really good conversation. A sunset that arrived at exactly the right moment. A laugh that was too genuine to be managed. In those moments, you were in your life. Fully, completely, without the remove. And then the moment passed and the monitoring resumed, and you went back to the slight distance. But the version of you that existed in those moments, present, unguarded, actually here, that's not a special occasion version. That's the version that's available more broadly if the conditions for it are created more intentionally. If the monitoring is given permission to stand down not just when something pulls you in, but as a practice. A daily, ongoing, imperfect practice of choosing to be in the thing you're actually in. That version is you. More fundamentally you than the vigilant one. The vigilant one was built for a specific purpose. The present one is who you were before the purpose arrived. So what does it look like to let everything be okay? Not as a permanent state, not as a denial of real things that are hard, but as a practice. A daily choice to be where things actually are instead of where your brain has already moved to. It starts with the body. Because okay doesn't arrive as a thought first. It arrives as a physical state, and the body that has been in low-grade threat mode for a long time has forgotten what the alternative feels like, so you start there. In the physical sensation of a moment that doesn't require anything from you. The breath that's slower than it needs to be. The shoulders that drop. The specific quality of a body that is not currently in danger and is being allowed to know that. That experience is available more often than you've been accessing it. Not always. Real life has real difficulty, but in the ordinary moments, in the Tuesday morning, in the conversation with someone who is genuinely glad you're there, it's available. And it requires something from you. It requires you to put down the monitoring long enough to be in the moment you're actually in. Not permanently. Just for this moment, this specific current actual moment that is not requiring anything except your presence in it. And then the next one. And then the one after that. Because that's what okay is, when you let it be what it is. Not a destination. Not a phase before something harder. Not something that will be taken away if you trust it too fully. Just a series of moments that don't require you to be anywhere other than in them. The past that hurts you is real. The future that might be hard is possible. But neither of them is here right now. What's here right now is just this. Just okay. What if everything was okay? I think for a lot of you the answer is, it might be. More often than you're allowing yourself to experience it. More of the time than the monitoring has been willing to admit. In more of your relationships and more of your ordinary days. In more of the hours you've been moving through from a slight remove. The okay is there. It's been there. You've been in it while not quite being in it. You're allowed to be in it. Not as a denial of what's been hard. Not as a pretense that life doesn't have difficulty. Just as an honest accounting of what this moment actually is. And this moment, right now as you read this, is probably closer to okay than the part of you that never stops scanning is willing to admit. Let it be okay. Not forever. Not unconditionally. Just right now. Just this moment. That's all okay ever asks. Just this one. And then the next. And then the one after that. That's how you come back to your own life. One moment at a time. Choosing to be in the one you're actually in.
There's a version of you that exists only in your head. It's the version that said the wrong thing in that conversation 3 years ago and is still replaying it. The version that's already prepared a full emotional response to a fight that hasn't happened yet. The version that read one slightly short text message and spent 45 minutes building a case for why everything is falling apart. That version of you is exhausting, and it never sleeps. And if you're being honest, it runs a lot more of your life than you'd like to admit. I've been thinking about this for a while, not in a clinical way. I'm not here to diagnose anything or hand you a breathing exercise, but in the way you think about something when you've lived inside it long enough that you finally want to understand it. When the pattern has repeated enough times that you're done being surprised by it and ready to actually look at it. Because I think a lot of us are losing to our own minds, quietly, daily, in ways that don't look dramatic from the outside, but are absolutely exhausting from the inside. And I think we've been told it's just anxiety, it's just overthinking. Take a walk, drink some water, journal about it. And none of that is wrong exactly, but it's also not quite getting at the thing. The thing is deeper than a habit, it's closer to a worldview. Let me start at the beginning, or at least the beginning as I understand it. Your mind learned to do this. It wasn't born doing it. At some point, probably pretty early, you were in a situation where paying close attention to other people's moods and signals and the slightest shifts in their behavior was actually useful. where catching the early warning signs kept you from getting hurt, where being one step ahead of a situation meant you could manage it before it managed you. So your brain got good at that. Really good. Exceptionally, almost professionally good at scanning for threat, at noticing the micro shift in someone's tone and running it through a threat assessment model at lightning speed, at filling in the gaps between what people say and what they might mean with worst case scenarios, because worst case scenarios are what your brain learned to prepare for. That was adaptive once. It kept you safe. It helped you navigate something that was genuinely hard to navigate, but you carried it out of that situation and into every situation after it. And now you're threat scanning in a text message from someone who loves you. Now you're running worst case scenarios about a meeting that hasn't happened yet. Now you're braced for impact in environments that are not actually dangerous, with people who are not actually threatening, because your nervous system never got the memo that the original thing ended. It's still doing its job. The job is just wrong for where you are now. Here's what overthinking actually feels like from the inside, because I think it gets flattened into a word. Overthinking, and that word doesn't capture the texture of it. It starts with a small thing, almost always a small thing that your mind snags on, the way a nail snags a piece of clothing, something someone said or didn't say, the way a conversation ended, a silence that lasted a second too long, a tone that was slightly off from how it usually sounds. Most people's brains would register that small thing, file it under probably nothing, and move on. Your brain doesn't do that. Your brain picks it up and starts turning it over, looking at it from every angle, running through possible explanations, building a context around it. And because your brain is very good at building context, because you are honestly an intelligent and perceptive person, the context it builds is detailed, specific, coherent. It has internal logic it hangs together. It just might be completely wrong. And here's the brutal part. You know it might be wrong. Somewhere in there, underneath all the architecture your brain is constructing, there's a quieter voice saying, you don't actually know this. You're guessing this might be nothing. But the louder voice, like the one with all the evidence it's been collecting, the one that has built this whole case, that voice is very convincing. It has receipts. It has a timeline. It has a narrative that makes sense, so you believe it, or at least you half believe it. Enough to act on it, enough to pull back a little or go quiet or preemptively protect yourself from a wound that might not be coming. And then the thing you were afraid of might actually happen. Not because you were right, but because the way you responded to your own fear created the distance you were trying to prevent. That's the loop. That's the one that runs your life if you let it. I want to talk about relationships specifically because I think this is where the overthinking mind does its most significant damage. And I think it's because relationships are inherently ambiguous. People are complicated, communication is imperfect, feelings shift. And ambiguity is exactly the kind of environment where an overthinking brain absolutely goes to town. You're with someone, or close to being with someone, and things are good, things are genuinely good, but your brain doesn't fully trust good. Good feels precarious. Good feels like a setup for something. So even while things are good, there's a part of you that's quietly scanning for the thing that's going to make it not good. And because you're scanning for it, you find things. Not because they're definitely there, but because if you look hard enough at anything, any relationship, any person, you will find ambiguity. You will find moments that could be read multiple ways. You will find evidence for almost any narrative if that's what you're building. So you find something, a slightly distant response, a canceled plan, a moment where they seemed somewhere else, and the machine kicks in. And now you're building the case for why this is falling apart while simultaneously pretending everything is fine. Because you know that bringing this up will make you seem crazy, will make you seem like too much, so you hold it. You process it internally. You have the conversation in your head 100 times. You prepare for outcomes that haven't happened. You grieve things that are still here. And all of that invisible work, all of that mental labor that the other person has no idea is happening, exhausts you, makes you quieter than you actually are, makes you pull back when you want to be close, makes you act in ways that are slightly misaligned with how you actually feel, because you're not responding to reality. You're responding to the story your brain wrote about reality, and eventually, inevitably, the other person notices that something is off, not what's actually off. They can't see that. It's all internal. Just that something is off. And they adjust. and you interpret their adjustment as confirmation of the story you already wrote, and the loop tightens. Here's the part I want to sit with for a minute, because I think it's the part that gets missed. Overthinking isn't just a processing style. It's also, underneath everything, a form of control. Stay with me on this. When you can't control whether someone is going to hurt you, and you never can. That's just the fundamental vulnerability of caring about people. Your brain finds another way to feel in control. It prepares, it anticipates, it runs every possible scenario so that when something goes wrong, at least you saw it coming. At least you're not blindsided. At least the pain arrives in a context you already built. Because being blindsided feels worse than being right about something bad. Being surprised by loss feels more devastating than having predicted it. So your brain works very hard, all the time, to make sure you are never surprised. The cost of that is never being fully present, never being fully relaxed into something good, always holding a part of yourself back, just in case, always watching the door even when you're inside somewhere warm. It's a terrible trade, but it feels like the safer one, and your brain is always going to root toward what feels safe. Let me tell you what the really insidious version of this looks like. Because the everyday overthinking, the text analysis, the reading of rooms, the pre-lived arguments, that stuff is visible enough that you can at least identify it. The insidious version is quieter. It's the way you talk yourself out of good things before they have a chance to become good. Someone shows interest, and instead of letting yourself feel that, you immediately start cataloging their flaws. Not because they're actually deal breakers, because if you can find enough flaws, then when it doesn't work out, you can point to the flaws. You already knew, you were never fully in it. It's the way you self-sabotage in advance. Pull back before they can pull back. End it before it can end badly. Leave before you can be left. It's the way you rewrite your own history to confirm the story your brain likes to tell. You felt something real, and then it hurt. And now when you look back at it, your brain has quietly edited the memory so that the signs were always there. You should have known, you were naive to trust it. Look how clearly it was written on the wall from the beginning. It wasn't written on the wall from the beginning. You were just present, open, hoping, the way a person is supposed to be. And something went wrong. And now your brain is retroactively building the case that you should have been closed. Because being closed would have hurt less. Being closed would have hurt less. And also produced nothing. And also made you smaller. And also been a kind of living death. But your brain doesn't calculate for aliveness, it calculates for safety. And sometimes safety and aliveness point in completely opposite directions. I've been thinking about the relationship between overthinking and self-worth, because I don't think they're separate things. I think a lot of people who overthink, not all, but a lot, do it because somewhere underneath the mental noise, there is a quiet belief that they are more likely to be rejected than not, that if someone really knew them, they'd leave. That the connection they feel is always more fragile than it appears, because they are, in some fundamental way, more difficult to love than other people, and the overthinking is partly an attempt to manage that. If you can see the rejection coming, you can prepare. If you can find the evidence early, you're not naive. If you hold back a little, you're protected. But also, and this is the part that's harder to say, the overthinking feeds that belief. Because when you're constantly generating worst case scenarios, constantly looking for the signs of leaving, constantly preparing for the end, you are practicing the belief that the end is inevitable. You are rehearsing it. You are making it more real in your body and your nervous system every single time you run the simulation. The mind is very literal about what it practices. If you practice being rejected, your brain gets better at feeling rejected. If you spend enough time preparing for loss, your nervous system stops distinguishing between the preparation and the actual thing. You end up carrying the emotional weight of a loss that hasn't happened. And you do that every day, for weeks, months, years. And then people ask why you seem tired. So what do you do with it? I'm not going to pretend I have the full answer. I don't think the full answer exists in a way that can be written down and handed to you, but I do think there are some true things worth saying. The first one is, your thoughts are not facts. I know that sounds like something on a motivational poster, and I'm sorry about that because it's actually a profound and difficult thing to practice. Your mind produces thoughts the way your body produces heat, constantly, automatically, without your permission. And not all of those thoughts are accurate. Not all of those thoughts deserve to be believed. The feeling of certainty that your brain attaches to its worst case scenarios is not evidence that those scenarios are real. It's just evidence that your brain is very good at its job. The second one is presence is the antidote, and presence is hard. Because presence means actually being in the moment you're in, not the moment your brain has already moved to. It means feeling the good thing while it's happening, instead of scanning it for the reasons it won't last. It means trusting, not blindly, not naively, but with the actual evidence in front of you, that right now, things are okay. Letting okay be okay without immediately upgrading it to a threat. The third one, and this is the one that took me the longest, is that you have to grieve the version of safety that overthinking promises. Because it does promise something. It promises that if you think hard enough, prepare enough, stay alert enough, you will be protected. You will not be caught off guard. You will not be hurt in the ways you've been hurt before. That promise is a lie, but it's a comforting lie. And giving it up means accepting that you cannot think your way to safety in relationships. You cannot prepare your way out of vulnerability. The only way through is actually through, open, present, willing to be surprised by both the good and the bad. That is terrifying if you are someone who has been hurt, and most of the people reading this have been hurt. But the alternative, staying inside the machine, living in the pre-lived loss, holding yourself back from the full experience of being alive with another person, that's not safety. That's just a slower kind of missing out. Your mind gets the best of you because it loves you in its way. It is trying to protect you. It learned something once about how the world works, and it has been faithfully applying that lesson ever since. Even when the lesson no longer applies, even when the environment changed and the people changed and you changed, it doesn't know it's out of date. It just keeps running the old program, trying to keep you safe, costing you peace. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not fundamentally harder to love than other people. You are someone whose brain learned to be very careful, and that carefulness served a purpose once, and now it's costing you more than it's protecting you. And the work, the long, uncomfortable, ongoing, nonlinear work, is teaching it that it's okay to put the armor down. Not all the way, not all at once, just enough to let something real get in, just enough to be here, actually here, in the life you're living instead of the one your mind keeps rehearsing. That's the whole thing, that's all of it. Let yourself be here. You're always the loser. There's a version of losing that nobody prepares you for. Not the kind where you fail a test or lose a job or get broken up with in a parking lot while your hazards are still on. That kind of losing is clean. It hurts, but it has a shape. You know what you lost. You know when it happened. You can point to the moment and say, that's the one. That's where it went wrong. The kind I'm talking about doesn't have a moment. It's the kind where you keep showing up, keep trying, keep being the bigger person, keep choosing the high road, and somehow, at the end of all of it, you're still the one sitting alone wondering where you went wrong. You did everything right, or at least you did more right than wrong, and you still lost. Not once, every time, and you start to wonder if that's just your thing, if losing is just something that happens to you specifically. I've been thinking about this for a while now, not in a wallowing way, more like there's something here I haven't named yet, and I need to name it before it keeps running my life. Because I think most of us who always end up losing in relationships, friendships, romantic stuff, family stuff, doesn't matter. We don't lose because we're bad at this. We lose because of something that looks like a strength from the outside, something that people compliment us for, something we were taught was the right way to be. We lose because we care more. And I know how that sounds. I know I care too much is the thing everyone says when they want to avoid accountability. Like, yeah, sure, buddy, you care too much. That's why you burned the whole thing down. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the person who cares so much they become controlling or jealous or obsessive. That's a different thing. I'm talking about the person who genuinely, quietly, consistently loves people harder than those people love them back, and keeps doing it, and can't stop, and doesn't know why. That person always loses. Not dramatically, just slowly, over and over again. Let me back up. I think it starts young. Not in some deep trauma way. I'm not trying to make this a therapy session. But I do think most of us learned early what role we were playing. And some of us learned that our role was to be the one who holds things together. Maybe you were the kid who noticed when mom was in a mood and adjusted accordingly. Maybe you were the one in your friend group who everyone came to when stuff was falling apart. But when your stuff was falling apart, you kind of just handled it yourself because it felt like too much to ask. Maybe you were the sibling who kept the peace, the partner who apologized first even when you weren't wrong, just because the silence was too heavy. You learned that love looked like management, like anticipation, like making yourself small enough that everyone else could be big. And here's the thing, and it worked. People liked you, people needed you, people said you were the glue, the rock, the steady one. Nobody asked if the glue was tired, so you kept going. You got good at it, really good. You got so good at reading rooms and adjusting and being whatever the situation needed that you kind of forgot to figure out what you needed. Or maybe you knew somewhere, but asking for it felt like breaking a rule you didn't write, but somehow agreed to. And that pattern, that beautiful, exhausting, self-erasing pattern, follows you into every relationship you ever have. Here's how it plays out in practice. You meet someone, it could be a friend, could be someone you're falling for, doesn't matter. You connect, it feels real. And from the jump, you're in it, you're present, you remember the details, you follow up on the thing they mentioned 2 weeks ago, you show up when you said you would, you notice when something's off and you say something. They like this about you. They tell you. You're different, they say. You actually listen, you actually care, and you feel it. That warmth of being seen, of being valued, of finally being in something that feels like it matches what you've been putting out for years. Except, slowly, quietly, you start to notice the math doesn't add up. You text first most of the time. You're the one who makes the plan. When something good happens to you, you tell them, and they respond warmly but briefly and then pivot to themselves. And when something good happens to them, you ask follow-up questions. You want to know everything. You're genuinely excited for them. They don't do that for you. Not in the same way, and you tell yourself it's fine. People show love differently. You can't expect everyone to be exactly like you. That would be unfair. That would be projecting. So you keep going. But then something hard happens to you, something real, and you reach out and they're supportive, but it feels surface level, like they're being a good person in the way you are a good person to a coworker you don't know that well. Polite, present, but not in it with you. And you know the difference. You know what it feels like when someone is actually in it with you because you've been in it with them. You know what it feels like to sit with someone in their hard thing. You've done it. You're good at it. They're not doing that. They're being kind, but they're not in it with you. And here's the moment. Here's the fork in the road that most of us don't even know we're standing at. You could say something. You could name it. You could say, hey, I feel like I'm carrying more of this than you are, and I need that to change. But you don't, because that feels like an accusation. Because you don't want to be the person who keeps score. Because what if you're wrong? What if you're being too sensitive? What if bringing it up ruins the whole thing and then you lose them anyway and it's your fault? So you say nothing and you adjust your expectations down a little and you keep going. And 6 months later, you're half the person you were when you started this and they're exactly the same and you're exhausted and you don't even know why. That's the loss. That's the one that doesn't have a moment. I want to talk about the hope problem, because I think hope is actually the engine of all of this. Not hope in the inspirational poster sense. I mean hope in the very specific, very quiet sense of, I think if I keep being this way, eventually it'll come back to me. You believe somewhere underneath everything that love is a long game, that consistency gets rewarded, that if you keep showing up and being real and caring deeply enough, one day the person on the other end of it will match you. Will finally see what you've been putting out and rise to meet it. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes people do wake up. Sometimes the thing you've been patient for actually blooms, but a lot of the time, and I think most of us know this but don't want to say it, a lot of the time, the hope is just delay. It's a way of not having to grieve something that's clearly already gone. Because as long as you're hoping, you don't have to admit that the version of this you wanted was never actually available. That's brutal to accept. That someone you love genuinely, deeply, for real, that someone might just not be built to love you back the way you need. Not because they're bad, not because you did anything wrong, just because they're different. They're wired different. They're at a different place. They need different things. You can love someone and still be wrong for each other. You can care about someone and still be the wrong shape for the hole they're trying to fill. That is a complete sentence. That is the whole truth. There's no fix at the end of it. And when you're the person who loves more, when you're always the one who's more in it, more invested, more hopeful, that truth hits different. because it means all that extra love you were putting out wasn't the solution. It was just yours. It lived in you. It didn't change anything. That's the part that makes you feel like a loser. But here's where I want to sit for a second, because I've been turning this over for a while, and I think there's something we get wrong about what losing actually means. We treat losing like it's about outcome. You win if the relationship lasts. You lose if it ends. You win if they choose you. You lose if they don't. You win if you stop caring first. You lose if you still care when they've already moved on. By that math, yeah. If you're the one who cares more, you lose every time. You will always be the last one in and the last one out and the one who misses it the longest. But I'm not sure that's actually losing. I think what we call losing in love is often just feeling more. And feeling more is not the same as being worth less. It is not a character flaw. It is not a weakness. It is actually one of the rarest things a person can have. Most people spend their whole lives looking for someone who will love them with real depth, real presence, someone who actually listens, who actually shows up, who actually stays. And you who always ends up on the losing side of this, you are that person. You are the thing other people are searching for. The problem isn't that you care too much. The problem is that you keep handing that to people who can't hold it. And I know that sounds like I'm just reframing the same loss as a gift, which is a little bit of a cope. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. You can call it beautiful all you want, but it still hurts to be in a mostly empty thing when you wanted something full. But I do think there's a real difference between I keep losing because something is wrong with me, and I keep losing because I keep choosing people who can't match what I'm bringing. One of those is a sentence about your worth. The other is a sentence about your pattern. And patterns can change. Worth can't, because it was never the issue. Let me talk about the aftermath for a second, because I think that's where the real damage lives. When you've been the one who cared more enough times, something shifts in you. You start to get suspicious of your own feelings. You fall for someone and there's this voice in the back of your head, quiet but consistent, that says, I don't. You know how this goes, you know where you end up. So you hedge, you hold back a little, you don't text as much as you want to. You don't say the thing you're feeling right away. You play it cooler than you are because you've learned somewhere in your body that the full version of you is too much. And then, and this is the part that's really something, you end up in relationships where you're actually not fully present, where you're performing a version of yourself that's been dialed back. And those relationships don't work either, because you're not actually in them. And you lose those too. So now you're losing when you care too much and losing when you try to care less. There's no version of this that's working, and the voice in the back of your head gets louder. See? You told you. You're just bad at this. You always lose, but you're not bad at it. You're just protecting yourself with a tool that's hurting you. The hedging, the holding back, the performance of indifference, that's not protection. That's just a different kind of losing. Slower, quieter, but still losing. Because you end up alone anyway. Except this time you're also not yourself. I think the thing that actually needs to change, Tina, and I'm saying this as much to myself as anyone, is not the caring. Don't stop caring. Please don't let the world do that to you. The thing that needs to change is the selection, where you're putting it. Because if you're honest, really honest, you probably knew early. You probably saw the signs, the texts, that were always a little shorter than yours, the way they talked about their ex with a little too much energy, going either direction, the way they went quiet when you needed them to go loud, the way the effort was always a little asymmetrical. You saw it, and you talked yourself out of it, because they had so many other good things, and who are you to expect everything? And maybe you're asking for too much, and maybe you just need to give it time. Time doesn't fix asymmetry. Time just shows you what was always true. You have to get better at believing people when they show you who they are early. Not cynically, not with your walls up from the jump, but with your eyes open, with the part of you that actually knows what it needs allowed to speak, without being immediately overruled by the part of you that just wants it to work. The right person is not going to require you to shrink yourself to make the relationship function. The right person is not going to make you wonder consistently where you stand. The right person is not going to be a project you're optimistic about. They're going to be someone who makes the asymmetry hard to find because they're actually trying. That person exists. I genuinely believe that. And I think the reason a lot of us haven't found them yet is not because we're unlovable or broken or too much. It's because we keep confusing potential with reality. We keep loving the idea of someone at the expense of the truth of them. So here's where I land on this. You're always the loser. Yeah, in a specific, limited, outcome-based reading of the word. Sure, you care more, you hurt more, you stay longer, you miss it harder when it's gone. But you're not losing at the thing that actually matters. You're not losing your capacity to feel. You're not losing your ability to be present for someone. You're not losing your willingness to be vulnerable even after it's burned you, even though it probably should have made you colder by now, but it didn't. That's not a bug. That is, genuinely, without irony, the whole thing. That's the part of a person that makes love feel like love instead of just convenience. You've been calling it a weakness your whole life because it's kept costing you. But it was never the problem. It was always the best thing about you. The world just kept putting it in front of the wrong people. That's a solvable thing. It's a slow, uncomfortable, sometimes heartbreaking thing to solve. But it's solvable. You're not cursed. You're not broken. You're not destined to always be on the losing side of this. You just need to stop handing your rarest quality to people who don't know what to do with it and start giving it to someone who already knows what they have.